Hello, everyone. I'll be reading Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse, and I will be reading the section called Summer of 1935, and I'll read through Autumn of 1935. In this book, anyways, this paperback book, the page number is 193, so if you'd like to follow along with the book, you can. I'm sorry, when I try to videotape with this dot cam, it gets really blurry. We'll do our best. Okay, I love the way this is written in poetic wording. The dream. Piano, my silent mother. I can touch you. You are cool and smooth and willing to stay with me, talk to me. Uncomplaining, you accept the cover to your keys, and still you make room for all that I place there. We close our eyes together, and together find that stillness like a pond, when the wind is quiet and the surface glazes, gazing, unblinking, at the blue sky. I play songs that have only the pattern of myself in them, and you hum along, supporting me. You are the companion to myself, the mirror with my mother's eyes, written July 1935. Midnight truth. I am so filled with bitterness. It comes from the dust. It comes from the silence of my father. It comes from the absence of Ma. I couldn't love her better. She could have loved me too. But she's rock and dust and wind now. She's carved stone. She's holding my stone brother. I have given my father so many chances to understand, to reach out, to love me. He once did. I remember his smile, his easy talk. Now there's nothing easy between us. Sometimes he takes notice of me, like coming after me in the dust, but mostly I'm invisible. Mostly I'm alone. My father's digging his own grave. He calls it a pond, but I know what he's up to. He is rotting away, like his father, ready to leave me behind in the dust. Well, I'm leaving first. July 1935. Out of the dust. This is not a dream. There's no comfort in dreams. I try to contain the ache as I leave my bed. I try to still my heart as I slip from my room with my kerchief of dimes. Moving slowly down the stairs, I cross through the kitchen, taking only some biscuits, and leave my father's house. It's the middle of the night, and I hear every sound inside me, outside me. I go, knowing that I'll die if I stay, that I'm slowly, surely smothering. I walk through the calm night, under the stars. I walk to where the train stops long enough for a long-legged girl to latch on, and as my heart races, I feel the earth tremble beneath me, and then the sound of sharp knives, metal against metal, as the train pulls up to the station. Once I might have headed east to Mr. Roosevelt. Now I slip under cover of darkness inside a boxcar and let the train carry me west, out of the dust. August 1935. Gone west. I am stiff and sore. In 2 endless days on this train, I have burned in the desert, shivered in the mountains, and I have seen the camps of Dust Bowl migrants along the tracks. There was one girl. I saw her through the slat in the boxcar. She stared up at the passing train. She stood by the tracks watching, and I knew her. August 1935. Something lost, something gained. He climbs into my car. He's dirty, and he has a sour smell. His eyes are ringed by the soil that comes from riding trains. But there's a deeper shadow to those eyes, like ashes, like death. He needs a hair comb and a shave and a mending needle applied to his pants. He speaks to me. Where are you from, miss? He wants to know. He shows me a picture of his family, a wife, 3 boys. The photograph is all he carries. That and the shredding, stinking clothes on his back. I feed him 2 of the stale biscuits I've been hoarding and save the rest. I'll be hungry tonight, what with giving my day's biscuits away. But I can see the gaunt of hunger in his cheeks. He asks if I have water, and I shake my head, my tongue thick with thirst. He eats the biscuits. He doesn't care they're caked with dust. He finishes eating, and crumbs stick to his mustache. He's staring hard at me, and his eyes water. I've done it again, he says, taken food from a child. I show him my cloth bag with more biscuits. At home, he said, I couldn't feed them, couldn't stand the baby always crying, and my wife, always that dark look following me, couldn't take no more. Lost our land, they tractored us out, so's we had to leave. Rented a while, then moved in with Lucille's kin. Couldn't make nothing grow. I nodded. I know. We talked as the train rocked, as the cars creaked, as the miles showed nothing but empty space. We talked through the pink of the setting sun and into the dark. I told him about Ma dying. I told him about my father, and how the thing that scared us both the most was being left alone. And now I'd gone and left him. I told him about the piano and Arlie Wanderdale, and how I wasn't certain of the date, but I thought it might be my birthday, and he was sleeping by then, I think. He was like tumbleweed. Ma had been tumbleweed too, holding on for as long as she could, then blowing away on the wind. My father was more like the sod, steady, silent, and deep, holding on to life with reserves underneath to sustain him, and me, and anyone else who came near. My father stayed rooted, even with my tests and my temper, even with the double sorrow of his grief and my own. He had kept a home until I broke it. When I woke, the man was gone, and so were my biscuits, but under my hat I found the photograph of his family, the wife and 3 boys. Maybe the photograph was left in trade for the biscuits. Maybe it was a birthday gift, the one thing he had left to give. The children in the picture were clean and serious, looking out with a certain longing. The baby had his eyes. On the back of the photograph, in pencil, was the address of his family in Moline, Kansas. First chance, I'm sending the picture back. Let his wife know he was still alive. I got off the train in Flagstaff, Arizona. A lady from a government agency saw me. She gave me water and food. I called Mr. Hardley from her office and asked him to let my father know I was coming home. August 1935. Homeward bound. Getting away, it wasn't any better, just different and lonely. Lonelier than the wind, emptier than the sky, more silent than the dust piled in drifts between me and my father. August 1935. Met. My father is waiting at the station, and I call him Daddy for the first time since Mom died, and we walk home together, talking. I tell him about getting out of the dust and how I can't get out of something that's inside me. I tell him he is like the sod and I am like the wheat, and I can't grow everywhere, but I can grow here, with a little rain, with a little care, with a little luck. And I tell him how scared I am about those spots on his skin, and I see he's scared too. I can't be my own mother, I tell him, and I can't be my own father, and if you're both going to leave me, well, what am I supposed to do? And when I tell Daddy so, he promises to call Doc Rice. He says the pond is done. We can swim in it once it fills, and he'll stock it with fish too. Catfish that I can go out and catch of an evening and fry up. He says I can even plant flowers if I want. As we walk together side by side in the swell of dust, I am forgiving him, step by step. For the pail of kerosene, as we walk together, side by side, in the soul-deep dust, I am forgiving myself for all the rest. August 1935. Now this is our final chapter, Autumn 1935. Autumn is also known as the fall. Cut it deep. I went in with Daddy to see Doc Rice. Doc said, "Why'd you wait so long to show someone those spots? Bayard?" I scowled at Daddy. He looked at the wall. I think he didn't care much if he had some cancer and took and died. Figured he'd see Ma then. He'd see my brother. It'd be out of his hands. He'd be out of the dust. Now he's getting to wear bandages where Doc cut the cancer out the best he could. And we have to wait and hope Daddy didn't get help too late. I asked Doc about my hands. "What," I say, "can I do with them?" Doc looks carefully at the mottled skin. The stretched and striped and crackled skin. "Quit picking at them," he says. "Rub some ointment in them before you go to bed," he says. "And use them, Billy Joe," he says. "They'll heal up fine if you just use them." Daddy sits on my bed and I open the boxes, the 2 boxes that have been in my closet for years now. The dust is over everything, but I blow it off, and Daddy is so quiet when he sees some of the things that are still so strong of Ma. And we end up keeping everything but a palm full of broken doll dishes. I thought once to go through these boxes with Ma, but Daddy is sitting on the edge of my bed. My mouth feels cottony. I fix dinner, and Daddy tells me about when he was a boy. He says, "I wasn't always sure about the wheat, about the land, about life in the panhandle. I dreamed of running off too, though I never did. I didn't have half your sauce, Billy Joe," he says. "And it's the first time I ever knew there was so much to the 2 of us, so much more than our red hair and our long legs and the way we rub our eyes when we're tired." October 1935. The other woman. Her name is Louise. She stayed by Daddy the days I was away. The first time I met her, she came to dinner bringing 2 baskets of food. She's a good cook without showing off. She has a way of making my father do things. When Louise came to dinner, Daddy got up and cleaned the kitchen when we were done eating. He tied an apron around his middle, and he looked silly as a cow stuck in a hole, but Louise ignored that, and I took a lesson from her. We walked around the farm, even though she'd probably already seen it while I was gone. She didn't ask to be taken to my favorite places, the loft in the barn, the banks of the beaver, the field where you can see Miss Black Mesa on a clear day. She told me she knew Daddy and I had a history before her, and she wished she'd been there for the whole thing, but she wasn't, and there wasn't anything to do but get over it and get on. We both stared in wonder at the pond my Daddy made, and she said, "A hole like that says a lot about a man." I didn't intend to, but I liked her, because she was so plain and so honest, and because she made Daddy laugh, and me, too, just like that. And even though I didn't know if there was room for her and me, I could see there was room for her and Daddy. When I asked him if he wanted me to go off to Aunt Ellis after all, Daddy said he hadn't ever wanted it, but he said I was his own, and he didn't like to think about what Aunt Ellis might do with me. And we laughed, picturing me and Aunt Ellis together. And it wasn't a nice laugh, but it was Aunt Ellis we were talking about after all. The thing about Louise, I'll just have to watch how things go and hope she doesn't crowd me out of Daddy's life. Not now, when I am just finding my way back into it. October 1935. Not everywhere. I walk with Daddy up the slope and look out over the Beaver River. Louise is back at the house. She wanted to come, but this is Ma's place, Ma's grave, Franklin's too. And Louise has no business here. She wants to come everywhere with us. Well, I won't let her, not everywhere. Daddy says she could have come. There's room enough for everyone, Billy Joe. But there's not. She can come into Ma's kitchen. She can hang around the barn. She can sit beside Daddy when he drives the truck. But Ma's bones are in this hill, Ma's and Franklin's. And their bones wouldn't like it if Louise came walking up here between us. October 1935. My life, or what I told Louise after the 10th time she came to dinner. I may look like Daddy, but I have my mother's hands. Piano hands, Ma called them, sneaking a look at them any chance she got. A piano is a grand thing, I say. Though ours is covered in dust now, under the grime it's dark brown like my mother's eyes. I think about the piano and how above it hangs a mirror, and to either side of that mirror, shelves, where Ma and Daddy's wedding picture once stood, though Daddy has taken that down. Whenever she could, Ma filled a bowl with apples, I tell Louise. I'm crazy about apples, and she filled a jar with wildflowers when she found them, and put them on that shelf above the piano. On the other shelf, Ma's book of poetry remains, and the invitation from Aunt Ellis, or what's left of it. Daddy and I tore it into strips to mark the poems we thought Ma liked best. We weren't always happy, I tell Louise, but we were happy enough until the accident. When I rode the train west, I went looking for something, but I didn't see anything wonderful. I didn't see anything better than what I already had, home. I looked straight into Louise's face. Louise doesn't flinch. She looks straight back. I'm the first one to back down. My hands don't look real pretty anymore, but they hardly hurt. They only ache a little sometimes. I could play right now, maybe, if I could get the dust out of the piano, and if I wanted to get the dust out of the piano, but I don't. I'm not ready yet. And what I like best about her is Louise doesn't say what I should do. She just nods. And I know she's heard everything I said, and some things I didn't say, too. November 1935. November dust. The wheat is growing, even though dust blows in sometimes. I walk with Daddy around the farm and see that the pond is holding its own. It will keep Ma's apple trees alive, nourish her garden, help the grass around it grow, enough to lie in the dream if I feel like it, and stand in and wait for Mad Dog when he comes past once a week on his way from Amarillo, where he works for the radio. And as long as the dust doesn't crush the winter wheat, we'll have something to show in the spring for all Daddy's hard work. Not a lot, but more than last year. November 1935. Thanksgiving list. Prairie birds, the whistle of gophers, the wind blowing, the smell of grass, and spicy earth. Friends like Mad Dog, the cattle down in the river, water washing over their hooves. The sky so big, so full of shifting clouds, the cloud shadows creeping over the fields. Daddy's smile, and his laugh, and his songs. Louise, food without dust. Daddy seeing to Ma's piano, newly cleaned and tuned. The days when my hands don't hurt at all. The thank you note from Lucille in Moline, Kansas. The sound of rain, Daddy's hole staying full of water as the windmill turns. The smell of green, of damp earth, of hope returning to our farm. The poppies set to bloom on Ma and Franklin's grave. The morning with the whole day waiting, full of promise. The night of quiet, of no expectations, of rest, and the certainty of home, the one I live in, and the one that lives in me. November 1935. Music. I'm getting to know the music again, and it is getting to know me. We sniff each other's armpits, and inside each other's ears, and behind each other's necks. We are both confident and a little sassy. And I know now that all the time I was trying to get out of the dust, the fact is, what I am. I am because of the dust, and what I am is good enough, even for me. 1935. Teamwork. Louise and I take walks after dinner. Every time she comes, By the time we get back, the kitchen looks pretty good. Daddy only leaves a few things he doesn't understand, like big pans and wooden spoons and leftovers, and that makes me a little irritated, but mostly it makes me love him. And Louise, knowing exactly what's left to be done, helps me finish up. She was my father's teacher at the night school class. She never married. She went to college for 2 years and studied and worked and didn't notice how lonely she was until she met Daddy and fell into the big hurt of his eyes. She knows how to keep a home. She knows how to cook. She knows how to make things last through winters and drought. She knows how to smooth things between two red-headed people. And she knows how to come into a home and not step on the toes of a ghost. I still feel grateful she didn't make cranberry sauce last month. At the first Thanksgiving we spent together, Louise made sweet potatoes and green beans and turkey and 2 pies, pumpkin and chocolate. I was so full my lids sighed shut, and Daddy walked with Louise instead of me out to Ma and Franklin's grave, where he let Ma know his intentions. And Ma's bones didn't object. Neither did mine. And when they came back to the house, Daddy still cleaned the kitchen. December 1935. Finding a way. Daddy started talking about planting the rest of the acres in wheat, but then said, no, let's just go with what we've got right now. And I've been playing a half hour every day, making the skin stretch, making the scars stretch. The way I see it, hard times aren't only about money or drought or dust. Hard times are about losing spirit and hope and what happens when dreams dry up. The tractor's busted. We don't have the cash to fix it, but there's nothing saying Daddy can't do the work by hand. It can't be any harder than digging a hole 40 by 60 by 6 feet deep. Daddy bought a second mule with Louise's help, her betrothal gift to him. He walks behind the team, step by step, listing the fields to fight the wind. Maybe the tractor lifted him above the land. Maybe the fields didn't know him anymore, didn't remember the touch of his feet, or the stroke of his hand, or the bones of his knees. And why should wheat grow for a stranger? Daddy said he'd try some sorghum, maybe some cotton, admitting as how there might be something to this notion of diversification folks here were talking about. And yes, he'd bring the grass back like Ma wanted. Where he wasn't planting anything else, he'd make new sod. And I'm learning, watching Daddy, that you can stay in one place and still grow. I wipe dust out of the roasting pan. I wipe dust off Ma's dishes and wait for Daddy to drive in with Louise, hoping she'll stay a little later, a little longer, waiting for the day when she stays for good. She wears a comical hat with flowers in December, and when she smiles, her face is full of springtime. It makes her hat seem just right. She brings apples in a sack, perfect apples she arranges in a bowl on the shelf opposite the book of poetry. Sometimes, while I'm at the piano, I catch her reflection in the mirror, standing in the kitchen, soft-eyed, while Daddy finishes chores. And I stretch my fingers over the keys, and I play. December 1935. And that's the end of our book. Hope you enjoyed it.